Welcome to Website Manipulation 101, a simple guide to web communication and Visual Basic 6 by Prey Talks. During this movie, I will explain how to access websites in Visual Basic 6, and how to control these websites using simple commands. These methods can be adapted to many forms of web-based automation, from automating the process of doing a simple search, to making an automated tool for any browser-based online game. I am going to use the online game Nordicmafia as my example throughout the guide. The first thing you should do is to create a new project in Visual Basic. Start by opening up the application. When Visual Basic has loaded completely, you should be met by this screen. To automate a website, you should select the option Standard Executable. Do this by double-clicking this icon. You will now see this screen. Let's go over the more important parts of the programming environment. This is your program's main form. It will contain the graphical user interface, or GUI for short. In layman terms, it is your program's looks and design. This toolbox is your tools for creating the looks of your application. This here is a tree view of all your files. Finally, this is the properties window. Here, you can set the options for all your components in the form files. To have the ability to access the World Wide Web at all, you have to add the Microsoft Internet Controls component to your project. Do this by right-clicking the Tools toolbox, and selecting Components. Scroll down the list until you see Microsoft Internet Controls. Click the checkbox, then proceed by pressing the OK button. You will now have the control added to your toolbox, in the form of a globe. The next thing you should do, though optional, is to enlarge your form. This will give you much more workspace, and make it much easier to design your application. Do this by clicking the bottom right blue box, and dragging it diagonally down and to the right. Next, click this globe. This will make you able to draw a web browser in your form, just like in MS Paint. When you have drawn out a browser of a fitting size, you should rename it. Originally, it is called Web Browser 1. To control this web browser, you must always type out its name before the command. With such a long name, this becomes tiresome quite quickly. Personally, I prefer calling it something like WB. If you want to do this, scroll up in the Properties window, and change the name field to whatever you like. I will be using the name WB throughout this video. Now we will attempt to navigate to Nordicmafia's main website. Just as an example, I will make the program do this when it is launched. To achieve this result, double-click your form wherever you haven't put anything yet, that means outside the web browser. When you double-click any object in a form, it will launch the code window, and show you the most often used code related to the control you double-clicked. If you double-click the form itself, it will show you the form's load code. If you have yet to write one, as in this example, Visual Basic will create a simple form load sub in the form's code. The marker will automatically be placed where we plan to enter our code. To navigate to Nordicmafia.net, we will have to call a function in the web browser. Let's start by explaining the code we will enter. WB is the control you wish to do something with, in other words the web browser. The dot means that one of the control's functions will follow directly after. Navigate is the function you wish to call, and the name should speak for itself. Any parameters that should be passed to the function, should be written directly after the function call itself. As the website address is a string, we will write "Nordicmafia.net?" Any string must be started and entered with the quotation mark, else otherwise Visual Basic will assume that it is more program code. This is all we have to do to navigate to a website. If you wish to try the application as it is now, simply press the F5 button on your keyboard. This will launch the application. When we open this website, we will want to log into Nordicmafia. Of course, this cannot be done while the website is still loading. This means that we will have to make Visual Basic wait until the website has completed loading. The web browser has a function called busy. This returns a Boolean value, which means either true or false, in other words yes or no, when we call it. This way, we can easily find out whether the web browser is still working. Since we want to wait until this value becomes false, we will write a simple loop that waits for the value to become false. This is done by using the while and when functions in Visual Basic. Since we want to stay in this loop while the busy property stays true, we will type out this code. On the next line, we will enter what should be done while the application is in this loop. Since we just want to wait until the value becomes false, we could theoretically not enter anything at all. But if Visual Basic is in a loop with nothing to do, it will in practice simply lock up. Therefore, we will enter the simple function doEvents. This will make Visual Basic perform all waiting processes, then resume the program code. Note that this does not mean that the website will load completely without a loop, but that it will accept any waiting incoming data from Nordicmafia. We will end the loop by going to yet a new line, and enter the word WEND. This tells Visual Basic that it is the end of the loop. However, there is a slight problem with this function. If we check the busy property immediately after we navigate to a website, it will be checked before the web browser has understood that it is supposed to navigate to a website. In other words, we need to give the web browser time to think before we ask it if it has completed the loading. We do this by entering doEvents before the loop starts, but after the navigation. Now we want to enter our username and password to the website. If you look at the source code of Nordicmafia's login form, you will see that these are the names of the input fields. To make Visual Basic enter text to these fields, we will do yet another function call. The code for this is quite self-explanatory, so I will not comment upon it. Finally, we will click the Submit button. Since Nordicmafia's administrator is stupid enough to actually name the Submit button, we can easily press it with the following code. After this is done, we will simply copy over the wait function we wrote above, doEvents and all, to after we have clicked the Submit button. To tell the user that it has completed the login sequence, we can make Visual Basic show a message to the user when it is done. Do this by entering the following code. MSG box, or message box, is yet another built-in feature in Visual Basic, and will, as the name suggests, show a message to the user with the entered text. The end result of this application is as following. It will navigate to nordicmafia.net. It will wait until the website is fully loaded. It will log in by entering your username and password, then clicking the Submit button. It will wait until it has completed logging it. It will show a message to tell the user that everything is done. This should suffice for making most complicated applications for any website, if you have the brains to adapt this code to what you need to do. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial, and understood what I were rambling on about. Good luck, and remember, stealing code from others automatically makes you a brainless retarded novato. Yes, Branko, that was especially for you.